Actor James Gandolfini's portrayal of New Jersey mafia boss Tony Soprano on TV's phenomenally successful series The Sopranos made him a household name. And his tough yet loving movie characters were establishing him as a box office draw. He died at age 51, leaving not just a financial legacy, but one that will forever change the image of television.
He changed the game in television. This guy, by making his own career, made other people's careers.
In terms of how much he was worth at the time he died, there's popular estimates are that he was worth around $80 million.
With children from 2 different marriages, a home in Italy, and a hastily written will, James Gandolfini's estate faces battles and criticism.
He did the will, he did the Band-Aid, he didn't go back and finish the job.
It becomes a circus because everything's public in the probate court. And that's what's happening in James Gandolfini's estate.
We do have parties with antagonistic interests, and there's a lot of money on the table. My hunch is it won't take long for good lawyers to find these people and crank up a war.
The fame, the fortune, the legacy of James Gandolfini. He becomes a father for a second time in 2012 when Deborah Lynn gives birth to their baby girl, Liliana Ruth Gandolfini. The couple is overjoyed, and Gandolfini starts to think it's time to rewrite his will.
So a couple months after she was born, he went to his attorney's office because him and his wife were going on a trip. He did a very simple will, came back from the trip, and then failed to update his estate planning documents after that.
At the time, Gandolfini couldn't have imagined that only 6 months later, the document would be the subject of a public debate. Gandolfini hasn't just left a world in shock, but he's also left an estate open to prying eyes, criticism, and dissection.
In James Gandolfini's estate, his estate is public, open to the media circus that we have, which is very interesting because his alter ego, Tony Soprano, did just the opposite. In fact, Tony Soprano consulted his CPA, who advised him to do a trust to keep it from prying eyes. But James Gandolfini did not do the same.
What will happen to Gandolfini's estate? Is his hastily written will going to leave his family in the lurch? On July 2nd, 2013, less than 6 months since it was drawn up, Gandolfini's will is submitted to the Surrogates Court in New York. It becomes a matter of public record, a document anyone can access. Most celebrities don't put all their assets into a will for this reason.
And the big problem with James Gandolfini is he did the will, he did the Band-Aid, he didn't go back and finish the job because there are a lot of problems with just relying on a will. A will goes through probate court, it's public, it's expensive, and it's more prone to cause fighting amongst the family. It's much better, especially for somebody with the size of James Gandolfini's assets, to use a revocable living trust.
A revocable trust involves leaving all your assets to one person, a trustee, with detailed instructions on how to divvy it up, where a probate court reviews the will in a public court setting, making it open to being contested.
And oftentimes when a celebrity passes away, it becomes a circus because everything's public in the probate court. And that's what's happening in James Gandolfini's estate. Because he used a will and didn't do the revocable living trust, we find out all sorts of details about who he's leaving his money to and how he's leaving it to them.
Plastered all over the media and internet, the dissection of Gandolfini's will becomes just that, a circus.
We saw dozens and dozens of different articles and newspaper stories debating the merits of James Gandolfini's estate, and then his attorney, I think, felt like he had to defend himself. So he gave an interview and said, look, this will was only one part of the estate plan, and there was much more to this picture that the public doesn't get to see.
The one thing that is clear is that Gandolfini was generous to a fault.
In James Gandolfini's will, he gave about $1.6 million in gifts off the top of his estate. He provided about $500,000 to each of his nieces. He provided gifts to friends and family members, and the balance of his estate, he gave 30% to each of his sisters, 20% to his surviving wife, and 20% to his very young daughter, Liliana.
The one missing item that stands out in the will is Gandolfini's son, Michael.
What he ended up doing was taking out a $7 million life insurance policy and putting it into trust for his son. In that way, though, what he was really saying is no matter what happens with my estate or how that is taken care of or evolves or what happens, my son will always be taken care of.
Son receives $7 million and his daughter receives a rough equivalent after taxes and other deductions. But it's not uncommon to see in the course of a marriage dissolving between young people, the wife to insist that the father make adequate provision for the children against the theory that he may fall in love with his next family and forget about his first.
Michael also inherits his father's clothing and jewelry, including his watch collection. But there's one watch he won't get. According to an insurance claim obtained by TMZ, a $3,000 Rolex is stolen from Gandolfini's room the day he dies. The claim doesn't mention forced entry or damage to the room, and there's no suspect listed. But many speculate that someone pocketed the watch during the commotion following the actor's heart attack. It's a minor blip compared to other issues with Gandolfini's estate.
There are many reports that James Gandolfini's total assets, including what goes through the probate court and what doesn't, to be about $70 million. And of this, most of that money is going to be subject to a 40% federal estate tax and a New York state tax of up to 16%. So you're looking at more than 50% of James Gandolfini's assets potentially going to pay the IRS through this estate tax.
Another criticism of the will is that Gandolfini's daughter, Liliana, is due to come into millions of dollars when she's only 21.
From my perspective, I've got kids that age and older. I don't think they should be having that kind of money as a windfall. What kind of kid, do you know many people, 21 years old? Hey, I just made $8 million. Let's go to Studio 54. We'll come back in 3 years. I just think that money is likely to go through their fingers too quickly. If I were he, I might have put it in the hands of a trustee so that the child has to go to the trustee to make a claim for the money. You want $10,000 to go party in New York for the weekend? Well, you got it, but I'm not going to give you $1 million.
A third problem is with Gandolfini's Italian estate. The actor has divided the property 50-50 between his two kids, saying he wants it to stay in the family for as long as possible. But even Tony Soprano doesn't make the rules when it comes to Italian law.
Problem is that Italy has its own set of laws, and in Italian estate law, you're only allowed to give away 25% of your assets, and because the real estate's in Italy, it would be subject to that law. Italian law says that 50% goes to the kids automatically, 25% goes to the spouse, and only 25% can be taken care of by a will.
So while Gandolfini wanted his home in Italy to be evenly split between his two children, it seems that his wife Deborah Lynn actually owns 25% of it. Also, Gandolfini's estate may owe millions in taxes. Experts predict lawsuits from Gandolfini's wife and ex-wife and the representatives of his children. Could it all lead to a heated battle between Marcy Wadarsky and Deborah Lynn? Gandolfini has left behind two children from different marriages, Michael, who is 13, and Liliana, who isn't a year old yet.
I think that there's a good possibility that we'll see more battles in the future over James Gandolfini's estate because the money is held in trust for his daughter until age 21, and the Italian property is held until both of his children turn the age of 25. That's a long time. So it's very likely if Michael's mother is not happy with how the trustees, one of which is James' widow, Deborah Lynn, are managing the Italian property, she can fight them.
Now, we haven't seen it yet, but that doesn't mean it's not coming.
It often takes years, sometimes many years, for all the documents, witnesses, and testimony to